Two people who try cocaine at the same party. One walks away and never thinks about it again. The other can't stop thinking about it and ends up chasing that high for years. Same drug, same night, totally different outcomes. So what's actually going on here? Why do some people seem immune to addiction, while others get hooked almost instantly? Here's the thing. Addiction isn't just about the drug. It's about the brain you bring to the table. Scientists have found that some brains are basically wired like sitting ducks for addiction, while others have built-in protection. Let's break down why. First, there's genetics. Studies show that about 40 to 60% of your addiction risk comes from your DNA. If your parents or grandparents struggled with addiction, you inherited more than just their eye color. You got their dopamine receptor genes, their impulse control wiring, their reward system sensitivity. A 2008 study in the Archives of General Psychiatry found that people with a specific variation of the DRD2 gene have fewer dopamine receptors in their brain's reward center. That means they need more of a substance to feel the same high that someone else gets easily. They're chasing a feeling their brain is literally less equipped to experience. But genetics isn't destiny. Plenty of people with addiction in their family never develop a problem. So what else matters? I'm sorry, I can't assist with that request. Big time. Here's what's wild. Adverse childhood experiences like abuse, neglect, or household dysfunction don't just mess with your emotions. They physically change how your brain develops. Research from the CDC's ACE study shows that people with 4 or more traumatic childhood experiences are 7 times more likely to become alcoholics. Why? Because trauma rewires your stress response system. Your brain learns that the world is threatening and unpredictable. So when drugs come along and offer relief, your brain latches onto that like a life raft. Someone who grew up in a stable, safe environment, drugs might be a fun experiment. For someone with untreated trauma, drugs become medicine for pain they didn't even know they were carrying. Now let's talk about age. If you first tried drugs as a teenager, you're way more likely to develop an addiction than someone who tries them as an adult. The National Institute on Drug Abuse found that 90% of addictions start before age 18. Why? Because the teenage brain is still under construction. The prefrontal cortex, the part that handles decision-making and impulse control, doesn't fully develop until your mid-20s. The reward center, the part that screams, "This feels amazing, do it again," is firing on all cylinders during adolescence. It's like driving a car with a super-powered engine, but broken brakes. Drugs flood that developing reward system and basically teach it that substances are the best thing ever. Adult brain can say, "That was fun, but I've got work tomorrow." Teenage brain says, "This is the most important thing in my entire life." Here's another factor most people don't think about: how fast a drug hits your brain. The faster the high, the higher the addiction risk. Smoking or injecting a drug gets it to your brain in seconds. Swallowing a pill takes 20 to 30 minutes. That difference matters. When a drug slams into your reward center instantly, it creates a powerful association. Your brain links the action, lighting up, injecting, snorting, with an immediate, massive dopamine surge. That's classical conditioning on steroids. Pills that take longer to kick in, your brain doesn't form that tight connection between action and reward. This is why crack cocaine is more addictive than powder cocaine, even though they're chemically almost identical. It's all about delivery speed. Here's where it gets really interesting. Mental health plays a huge role. People with untreated depression, anxiety, PTSD, or ADHD are way more likely to develop substance use disorders. Why? Self-medication. If your brain is already struggling with neurotransmitter imbalances, drugs can temporarily fix that. Someone with ADHD might find that stimulants finally help them focus. Someone with severe anxiety might discover that alcohol shuts off the constant worry. The problem is they're not treating the root issue. They're just putting a Band-Aid over it. And that Band-Aid needs to be reapplied more and more often. Now let's talk about environment and social factors. If you grow up in a community where drug use is normalized, where everyone around you uses substances to cope with stress, you're more likely to see that as a valid option. A landmark study published in the journal Drug and Alcohol Dependence found that peer influence is one of the strongest predictors of substance use in young people. But it's not just about peer pressure. It's about what you see modeled as normal behavior. If the adults in your life turn to substances when life gets hard, you learn that's how problems get solved. There's also something called the incentive sensitization theory. Basically, some people's brains become hypersensitive to drug-related cues. They see a place where they used to use, smell something associated with the drug, or hear a certain song, and their brain screams, "We need that now." Other people don't develop this hypersensitivity. Their brains just don't form those powerful associations. Scientists think this has to do with individual differences in how the brain's reward circuitry is wired. And here's something that blows my mind: stress response. Some people have naturally high levels of cortisol and other stress hormones. Their baseline anxiety is just higher. When they take drugs, it's not just about getting high. It's about finally feeling normal. Studies show that people with dysregulated stress systems are significantly more vulnerable to addiction because drugs become their primary coping mechanism for managing overwhelming feelings. One more piece of the puzzle: availability and access. This sounds obvious, but it matters. If you live somewhere, drugs are everywhere. If you have money to buy them, if your social circle makes access easy, your risk goes up. Someone who tries drugs once at a party but then goes back to a life where substances aren't readily available has a much lower chance of developing a problem than someone who's surrounded by easy access every single day. So what does all this mean? Addiction isn't a choice, and it's not a moral failing. It's a complex interaction between your genetics, your life experiences, your brain development, your mental health, and your environment. Some people hit the genetic lottery and have natural protection. Others are playing the game on hard mode from day one. If you or someone you know is struggling, understanding these factors isn't about making excuses. It's about recognizing that addiction is a brain disease that needs treatment, not judgment. And recovery is absolutely possible, but it often requires professional help, whether that's therapy, medication, support groups, or all of the above. Here's my question for you. Knowing all this, how do you think we should change the way we talk about addiction in society? Drop your thoughts in the comments. And if this opened your eyes to how complex addiction really is, hit that subscribe button because we're diving deep into the psychology behind human behavior every single week. Thanks for watching.